Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Property Marketing Lounge. This is the first episode of the second series. We had such a great time hosting the first season that we decided to do it all again, basically. So I hope you've all had a good summer and a good start to the autumn. We're really excited to share this session with you. As part of our mission to elevate the role of marketing in property, we believe that marketers have a strategic position across the business, and that fundamentally, most crucially, involves working alongside operations, sales, as well as other departments as well, but particularly sales and operations is why we're here to talk today. We've called it the sales operations marketing triangle, but it could be a circle, it could be any other shape, to be fair. The point is that they're intrinsically linked, and the kind of it never ends really, and there's no start or end of how these functions work together. And today we're really excited to listen to how our guests work in their organisations and their experience of how the relationships between those functions work and sometimes don't work, and how to resolve those. These sessions can't happen without our partners, so we want to say a big thank you to Stay Keepers for sponsoring this session. Stay Keepers can fill your void rooms, however short-term or long-term those may be, and whatever types of audience that you have, so do look those up. We're going to hand over now to our panelists to introduce themselves. So over to you, Russell.
Oh, hi, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Russell Markou. I have been with Quintain Living for 6 years today. Started off in construction in my earlier days, black and white in those days. And then I fell into property development with my cousin in a company called Beetham Organisation. That led to a career in hotels where I worked for Hilton and Radisson brands. And from the Hilton, I joined Quintain, as I said, 6 years ago. At that time, we had no units live. And then shortly after that, we had 141 units back in 2016. Today, we're operating over 3,000 units. So it's been an amazing journey and a fantastic experience to date.
Thank you. Lee Rennie?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for seeing us here today. So my business is called Melu, and we're a managed live chat company. And what we do is put live chat software onto our clients' websites, but we also have a team of operators to look after it for them. We do this 24/7, and the idea is to provide your website visitors with the best possible customer service that you could offer them, as well as generating more leads for your business. We've been doing this for nearly 3.5 years now. Previous to that, I ran a web design company, so very much used to the whole website marketing side of things and digital marketing. And the reason for starting Melu was purely because so many websites are set up brilliantly for visitors to come along, but then they fail to connect with them in the right way to get them over the line. And having human operated live chat is a really good way of doing that. So that's Melu.
Thank you very much, Lee. Tom?
Hi, I'm Tom White. I'm co-founder of WOW Agency. I've been around the sector for a long time, albeit WOW is very new in various roles, but we created WOW to try and be a very specialist agency for the student and wider living markets, specialising in PBSA, university accommodation, co-living and build to rent, to try and fill a gap of agencies who really understand the challenges facing a very specific market. And I really look forward to today, because one of the aims that we really wanted to fulfill was to be a very specific agency that tries to tackle revenue generation rather than just marketing for marketing's sake. So in terms of our foundations, it's from a very sales and marketing background, trying to make sure those two things work together. So I think today is the perfect topic for us to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Tom. And last but not least, Lee Rawlinson.
Hi everyone, I'm Lee Rollinson, so Sales Director at Homes for Students. Been around the property industry since the mid to late 90s, so about 23 years in the industry, and wow, what changes we've seen over that period. Technology arrived, everyone was talking about en-suites and Wi-Fi as features for student accommodation, and now the conversation and language is very much turned to safety and security. We've got over 32,000 beds around the country, so in over 40 cities around the country, supporting universities with properties and their student communities. So yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. So we're going to kick off in just a second. Just want to draw your attention to the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. You're welcome to ask any questions to the guests and we will make sure that they get answered. So please do use that function. Right, so I'm gonna get started if that's okay. So first question is going to go to Lee Rawlinson and Russell as kind of from the operation side of things, really. So can you talk a little bit about the structure of the three sales, operations and marketing functions in your business and how they work? And then we'll bring other Lee and Tom. That's not really very nice, is it? Just calling you other Lee. Don't take offense. Lee and Tom into the conversation in a little while.
Both Lee are as well, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, I guess Homes for Students. Yeah, our kind of three areas of marketing, sales, and ops. So marketing, they look after the who is our audience before they become customers. What's important to them? What are their needs? How are those needs changing? What's changed? And what is changing over the years? And what can we learn here? That then feeds into our sales teams, and they deliver the how, agree approaches, the game plan, how do we meet those needs that marketing have highlighted, where are the gaps, and what can we share? And as a national operator, how can we share best practice across cities? So something that is particularly working in one city or is an emerging trend, how do we respond to that? And then both of those departments feed up into that kind of pyramid of power into our ops team. And really ops look after the why, pulling it all together, creating and supporting a vibrant student community, instant impact and validation. They're the first ones to know whether we've got it right and the first ones to know whether we've not got it right. And how do they then feed that information and learning back into the business? As you said before, kind of the cycle begins again. I guess what's probably unique is our leadership structure. So all three of those areas feed into one voice. So Scott Lewis is our Senior Director of Sales and Operations. And he essentially is that person, that cornerstone of those departments. So we can identify shared objectives across the departments as one, remove any barriers, and we're not playing interdepartmental tug of war, wasting loads of energy in areas where we don't need to. We can focus all of that energy into supporting students and the universities that we work with across the country. So that's probably, I guess, in a nutshell, how it works at Homes for Students and how we've seen success over the years.
And in your sector, Russell, how is that different?
There's many similarities in terms of the customer experience, but where we're quite different at Quintain Living, we're based in Wembley Park, which is quite unique compared to other sectors where they're sort of separated across many regions. So as we're based in one location, as I mentioned before, we've got over 3,000 apartments in operation at various stages of lease up. Another 400 coming early 2023, but then we're about to go into the ground for another 2,500 units early next year. But how we're set up is we have a central leasing team which serves the entire estate. Marketing also sits centrally, and they also generate all the leads for the entire estate. And the operations team, we take care of our residents day to day, and are responsible, along with marketing, for residents' engagement and retention. Similar, we have a head of each department as well, and we do a lot of collaboration. And next year is going to be a pretty exciting year in terms of more stabilized assets and really sort of setting our strategy much more aligned across those three groups. So it's going to be an exciting one for us. That's pretty much how we're set up right now.
Thank you. And if Lee and Tom, you're more kind of on the agency and support side. So what's your kind of experience of how the structure of sales, operations and marketing can impact success?
It's very rare that you find, in terms of what Lee Rawlinson outlined there in Homes for Students, in terms of such a symbiotic relationship of one head owning all of those things. But I do agree that it's becoming increasingly important that operations is considered a key component of any marketing effort, because what we used to term customer experience and think was something that was owned by an operations team is actually a brand experience. So if you've got a massively disjointed relationship between your marketing, your sales activity and your operational delivery of it, effectively you are outlining a promise to a customer when you're recruiting them, when you're acquiring that customer at the journey. If your ops journey aren't on that and they're not brand trained, and the operational delivery of what you do, you're instantly going to have a dissatisfied customer. So increasingly ops have to be part of that conversation. This concept of customer experience, we very much think of it as brand experience, or the fulfillment of that brand promise, because that's how you get back through that cycle, right? Because if that bit's wrong, your next sales cycle is going to be so much harder, because you've suddenly got a load of negative reviews of saying, I didn't quite get what I thought I was getting, I was promised this and it didn't happen. And you end up with this sort of Frankenstein monster of an organization, where on one side it's all shiny brands, lovely, gorgeous images of multicultural, you know, experiences, and then you arrive and it's someone going, you haven't got your key, you can't come in. That's massively at odds. So that's where I think those bits are really important. And I would also say it's emerging, but from our experience, it's rare to have such a joined up organizational structure that you outlined there, Lee and Russell. I think people are getting it more though.
And Lee, what about from your side? Because what you're doing effectively is something that probably the marketeers are fighting for, but it's an operational process. Yeah.
So my comments on this are slightly different, because I'm coming from a slightly different angle, but I think it's very much a couple of things that Lee said and what Tom's just confirmed is this whole user journey and the user experience part of things, which I think, I mean, we deal with a range of different clients across lots of different industries, and we do have clients in the student accommodation space. And it's very, as Tom just said, it's very rare to find someone that's kind of got everything lined up, because very often we'll talk to people who are considering changing their website without knowing why they're doing it, without the data to know why the website needs changing. And actually what they need is just to look at the whole picture and who's coming to the website in the first place, for example. So we'll have clients that they've got great shiny websites that have been poured over for ages, probably 3 months late going live because they want to make them perfect. But at the end of the day, they don't have the right traffic coming to it. They don't have the right people coming to it to convert them. And more often than not, the consideration is that the website isn't working and that needs changing. And of course, that's not the problem. The problem is getting people there and the experience people have when they're there. So we can instantly tell so we give our clients a free trial and they go on, and you can straight away see what people want when they come onto the site, because they're chatting, they're telling you everything that they want from your website, which is really great information. But the worst thing is when you just don't get any chats coming through just because there aren't enough people coming through to it. And that's a common problem. The website's great, but there's no traffic. It's almost like having your flagship high street store and sticking it in the middle of a field where no one's going to see it. That's not the problem. It's getting people to it. So from my point of view, it's more of who's coming to the site and how can you connect with them in the right way in that moment, because everyone is getting more and more impatient and reading less and less when they're on these sites. They expect the answers much quicker. And that's been a web design trend for years, that people are reading less and less and taking less and less notice of things and wanting it instantly. So those things are definitely the areas that I think, from an operational point of view, it's great having the brand and everything there, but you've got to get people to it. You've got to have the right strategy behind it as well.
Definitely. And Lee mentioned specifically a sort of sales department and a sales function, but for the rest of you, I guess where does sales sit within all that? Is it a separate function? Is it everybody's responsibility? Is it operations? Is it marketing? Who ultimately, do you believe is responsible for the sales?
For us, it's our leasing team are first and foremost responsible for converting sales, but they can't do it alone. You know, they're supported by all other operational departments in the business, including ops and maintenance departments. You know, it's how you make people feel. Everyone on the floor, on the shop floor and operations, is technically a salesperson for the brand. It's how you make people feel. It's the condition, it's the cleanliness product during tours. Every detail matters. That arrival experience is everything. Those positive takeaway memories, and then those prospects become your salespeople. You know, we train our teams to ensure that everyone who enters our buildings is a potential customer, whether it's careers or contractors. They need to leave having an absolutely positive experience. Then they promote us. You know, everyone is a customer in our opinion. You create that vibe amongst your team and that culture. It's just infectious. You end up with happier residents, happier team members, and everyone who comes into touch with you wants to come back. That's our approach. So everyone is a salesperson, in our opinion.
I think it's really interesting to Lee Rennie's point. I'm sorry, I can't even say Lee R. What you were talking about in terms of the complexity now of that consumer journey is so multi-layered now in terms of the touch points that a consumer will go into before making a decision. Everybody is a salesperson, and culturally, I think that's really important to drive through because it drives all of those behaviours. I do think there is a big question, not just for this sector, but for all sectors that are dealing with the disconnect between sales and marketing, especially when it's a B2C environment, is marketeers thinking and behaving and being KPI'd like salespeople would be. And I've bang on about this. It's one of the reasons we started WOW. You know, like my background is very commercial, you know, sales focused. A lot of that has been in marketing arenas, right? And if a salesperson came for a job and their target was to hit £1 million worth of revenue, they're always on some sort of value-based remuneration, and they behave that way. So, but if you go to your average marketeer or salesperson and say you're going to be remunerated that way in terms of your marketing function hitting and behaving like a salesperson, it's very hard to find marketeers that will think and behave that way. And I think that's the actual bit about transacting the customer. I totally agree with this cultural concept of everybody is a salesperson because of how many touch points there are. But in terms of marketing, having its place around the executive table and saying it's important, marketing is sales in this environment, because the best salesperson any of you have is your website, right? You transact more customers through your website than you do people ringing the phone, and it's your marketing team that drives that. But I'm not sure, maybe a question, do we think that the marketeers that we have in those teams behave like salespeople and are KPI'd as such?
I'd say that it's important to set those objectives at the very start and decide how you measure in the business. You know, what does success look like? Is success shared? Is success high levels of rebookers, high retention, happy students, engaged community, good reviews? Is success kind of understanding and learning more about what's changing? Like literally in the time we've been in kind of the student sector, Tom, it's been massive changes, hasn't it? You know, the language that's used, the hooks. I remember, you know, at the University of Liverpool, we started to build brand new ensuite accommodation, and the student recruitment team latched straight onto that because it was used as a conversion activity. You know, you've got an ensuite here, come and study in Liverpool. And that was always a big hook. And the language started off being more facilities and amenities based and less about kind of community and that illustration of what's the story, you know, the best years of your life. How do you communicate that message? How do you talk in language that is easily digestible? And also, are you talking to the right audience? Are decision makers students, whether parents and supporters, guardians? Who makes the decision ultimately, and how are you meeting that demand pool as an organisation? So I guess setting out those clear objectives from the start and having them set in stone, that those are the clear objectives. It's not a moving target that, oh, you know, reviews are low, so we need to do something over here. Those are all in-year kind of marginal changes and tweaks that start in the year with a very clear plan of what you're trying to do. Everyone buys into it, and and it makes it really, really easy for everyone. I mean, we have over 500 people within the team across the country, and how do you, if you stopped anyone in any of those properties, they'd be able to say exactly, here's the objective, because it's so clear. And I think you have got to have that single focus, because everything else is at the margins, and that can stop you kind of wasting your energy and going off down a tangent of something that maybe you think is important. And to your point, Tom, if they're KPI'd as a salesperson, that can encourage the wrong type of behaviours maybe. So yeah, how do you boil those objectives down to a really, really fundamental kind of, this is what we have to achieve, and everything else is great, but this is what we have to deliver as a team. I've always been fascinated by that.
And I think a lot of the conversation we're going towards is that the product is everything that goes into that product. It's the experience, the resident experience, the brand experience, the sales experience, all of that. But so often I think there's still organizations that are working in silos, and therefore there is still this idea, well, the accountability for sales is this person, the accountability for marketing is this person, the accountability for this is this person. And I think, one of the reasons we really wanted to hold this session is that, as a sector, we need to break that down, because like we're all saying, it's about product. So, one of the things that we're always talking about is kind of the forgotten kind of strand in marketing campaigns is that internal messaging. And how do you kind of, I guess, Lee and Russell, kind of, how does your internal comms function on executive leadership kind of help drive that sense that actually, yes, like you said, Russell, if you're a maintenance person, you can have an impact in sales. If you're a cleaner, you can have an impact in sales. And actually, that's the message that we need to get out. So I'm just interested in kind of that role of internal comms in this process.
It's about making the connection to people, isn't it? I mean, we talk, in the property world, we talk about assets and we talk about units, and we talk about the kind of the building itself, the fabric of the building, but behind all of that is the people. And a building shiny and new once, and then every year thereafter, 40 years, 30 years later, it's not shiny and new anymore, but the people, that sense of community, how they make your residents feel. And I guess that's probably the interesting dynamic between me and Russell in terms of, kind of what that customer experience looks like, what from my side, kind of students, ultimately everyone's residents, and they've got the same moans and groans and niggles of any residential building anywhere. So how do you tune the internal teams in to respond to those things quickly, and have a plan to be able to create delight moments and create a sense of, I'm in the right place, validated. It's like when you go on holiday, the pressure on you as the holiday organizer is ginormous, and straight away you're constantly ticking things off in your head. Yep, I made the right decision. Yep, that's a great decision. That's a great decision. That's a wrong decision. And you instantly feel that straight away. And I think we're in a very similar side of that with residential and property. The students are telling you and responding. The residents are telling you and responding whether you've got it right or you've got it wrong.
Yeah,
very quickly.
Totally agree. And I think it's also okay to get it wrong and to be open about it as well. I think that honesty, and in a new sector, we're still learning a lot. We're still gaining insights, which our marketing team are doing very well from our residents. But it does boil down, as you say, Lee, to the right people, the right hearts and minds. People can be so much more tolerant and forgiving for those little mishaps if you have the right people with the right messaging, but genuinely from the heart, not just, scripted stuff. If you get the right people, then you get a genuine response, as long as you've trained them on the understanding the core values of the business. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, when I was in hotels, we would I started this one hotel and the product was so old, and I looked at the NPS scores on product and it was declining year on year because the owners just weren't investing. So really focused on the customer service side, the bit that costs nothing, right? Just training the team in the right way to be free, to be themselves. And before you knew it, like over about 3 or 4 months, the product score in NPS, whilst we weren't investing, went up. So it's just, it just shows how you can get real value from just driving that customer experience, which enhances every part of their experience and drives retention. And it's making sure that the teams understand that, but genuinely understand it. And that's difficult in a sector that's emerging and where we're still learning and haven't got all our processes right, building our systems still. Maybe different for you, Lee and Tom, in students, but in our sector, we're still growing significantly and trying to sort of understand the best processes, create the most efficient processes for our owners, our investors. So it puts the team under a lot of pressure as well, but looking after them and giving them the right values that underpins their performance just speaks volumes. It really does.
I think that almost starts, doesn't it, Russell, at recruitment phase as well? You almost know, because these people are such the visible heart of those sites that they're running. They drive it culturally, and the difference, right? We've all walked into a student site or a build-to-rent site, and it feels different. And so often that comes down to the actual GM of that site. And if you can get that, and culturally, when you're recruiting, you feel like you're a caring person, you know what I mean? Like you will represent this brand well. You've solved half the battle there.
You do, and you have to be emotionally intelligent in this sector, in this world as well, especially the last sort of almost 2 years that we've been through. It's really shown us how powerful emotional intelligence is, and just having it, and just these are people's homes, right? They're spending a lot of their money, a large percentage on rental, which to some people is historically is dead money, but now it's the way of the world, and people want to see value from that, and you get that through the right people. But you need to support our people, the right people, with the right systems and processes to make it easier, so it's not all automated. There is that human interaction still, which is key. Those relationships are just so invaluable, so valuable. Sorry, it's just amazing.
What happens? I mean, when it goes wrong, I mean, let's not beat around the bush. There can be tensions between operations and marketing, and we've had a question from the audience, from Alex McKenzie, who is kind of referencing tension that can be from kind of marketeers generating leads and actually the reality of the expectations to ensure long-term value by retaining customers. I'm going to just direct this question first of all to Lee Rennie, because I'm sure whilst dealing with live chat, you probably do see some of this, that people are kind of coming in through the marketing funnel, and actually, they've been drawn to the website, and maybe what they've been sold isn't quite what they expect.
Yeah, we do experience that, and people will. Well, it's two things. It's people coming because they've already purchased something and it isn't what was expected, and also it's just that whole sales, the funnel after the initial contact. And so we often get chats where someone will come on and say, I chatted with you last week, or I spoke to someone last week and I'm expecting something and I haven't heard back yet. And so we see that a lot, and it just shows that when the website can be geared up perfectly to getting these people over the line with regards to being a lead, but it's then who follows up and the process behind that of how quickly you get back to people. And what we do is all about the speed. I mean, having the live chat there is a big convenience for the visitor, because they can talk to a real person in that moment. If we then pass that on and it takes a week for someone to come back to them, then the opportunity is lost. So yeah, we do see that quite a lot. And of course, there's not a huge amount that we can do to make that happen any faster, because it's up to our client to manage that. But often it's because they're not set up in the right way to be able to handle that, and the whole process from start to finish.
Yes, understanding as well the function of live chat serves different audiences at different stages, doesn't it? You just alluded to it then, Lee, that you're getting people returning back on live chat. It's not just served its function, that sits on the website, handles the inquiry, cool, now you're into the funnel and on to the next stage. It's someone coming back. So I guess in our world, Russell as well, it's that, can that function and that facility serve that purpose? You mentioned then, Russell, about automation. One of the quickest way to turn good people off, as in the team, is repetitive tasks. So, for us, student lockouts, loads of them, never goes away. And how do you automate certain bits of that where it's kind of low value, quite transactional, not necessarily detailed, and wanting to explore an avenue of help or support, but I need this, can you sort it out? and having an element of automation in behind the front end kind of lead generation into audience service and resident service and customer service once they are customers, repairs, maintenance, payment queries, you know, which lanes, and being able to segment out your high volume, low value inquiries from your more detailed, like I actually need some help, and I feel more comfortable engaging with a chatbot or someone on the web, and then that opens the door a bit wider. We can then have a proper conversation with a human, and all the empathy and all of the kind of support and help is there behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with us, everyone, all of our operators are all very much customer service driven, and this came up in the earlier discussion about who is a salesperson. And whilst they're there to help people in that moment and like say, empathize with them if there's a problem, they are also part of the sales function. And someone might say something that means that they are now someone that can be sold to, and they can be referred to other things. It's not always just about taking someone's details and essentially sticking them in the funnel. It might be that they've said something and there's something there that they get that they don't realize is on the website. And it kind of stems back to that whole thing of people jumping on websites from a Google search and not really taking much notice of what the site is saying. And you'd be amazed at how often we get chats where the person thinks the business does something that it absolutely doesn't, because it's come up in a Google search because it's been optimized for something that maybe it shouldn't be, or it isn't clear enough. So you often get people who are looking for something that isn't actually there. And in that process, the person could either direct them to the right place or say, well, there's another product or service that you could use here. So it is a sales function as well.
I think, I guess just getting back to the sort of the question about the relationship between sort of lead management and the expectations of reality. Surely this comes back to marketing, understanding the product and being involved in the operational process as well. Russell, how does that work at Quintain? I think Deanie and I are very conscious that quite often marketeers, if they're not valued in a strategic way, are just given stuff to do and given stuff to market, and that means that they're not always engaged and understanding of the product.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really valid point, and it's something we've grown so fast over the last few years. It's something that we're continuously improving on. So as I mentioned before, 2022 is going to be an exciting year. Our marketing team is bedded in. We've got stabilized assets now, and you know, the relationship and the support that we're going to get from our marketing team in terms of events, communications, which is going to all lead to driving retention. It's going to be a really interesting time, and I think we're quite different. We have healthy tension, which is brilliant. You know, we test and push boundaries and we challenge each other, which is super exciting. But as long as we're genuinely aligned in our company objective and we set aside egos and pride and we embrace being challenged, then it's a great formula for success. I mean, it is, like I keep saying, BTR is still in its infancy, and we just need to be completely open to experimenting with new initiatives. And we don't have all the answers yet, but I'm really excited to see in our business how much more aligned we've become over the last 6 months under new leadership, especially with our strategies, aligned strategies for everything, down to, like I say, comms per building, because we have lots of buildings across the estate. So each resident team in a building will communicate directly to their own residents, whereas if it's a site-wide communication, that will come from marketing to ensure it lands at the right time and it's in the same tone of voice. The events team we're working with now, really close. I don't know, it's just a lot of positivity coming out ahead of it. It's a bit too early for me to answer that question fully, but going into 2022, we're all complete with, towards this year, certainly we all have one objective of occupancy, which we're looking on track to hit, and we build our strategies around that per department. But yeah, this next year is going to be quite an exciting one, and we are all going to be completely on page and aligned. That's the feeling right now.
I think the danger exists, doesn't it, when the marketing team are kept separate and kept out, and that understanding. So one of the things I love, and Tom very much kind of part in my thoughts when I'm saying this, but kind of Tom from 2011, 2012 literally was cooking with students. And then actually a few years ago, Tom, you actually checked in and spent a week living in student accommodation, didn't you? Kind of back to school and understand, you know, you've got to have that deep understanding at a personal level to be able to then say, right, okay, I'm learning loads here because I'm literally immersed in this environment. Can you talk about those experiences, Tom?
Yeah, I'm still coming down from the highs of. No, genuinely though, it was a point I was going to make. Is like the bigger value that you get from those three dots being joined up is this constant feedback loop of data, whether that's quantitative or qualitative. In terms of marketeers and salespeople need to be constantly armed with the tactics that they know are going to hook and engage the audience. And actually, the people who probably know that the best in most organizations are the ops people, right? If you go and actually understand whether it's what I did, like an idiot, and went and lived back in at student digs for a week, or having a good relationship with your operational lead and understanding what today's consumers are enjoying, that gives you half of the battle of what you need to go and tell to re-engage people back into the top of the funnel, right? Because a lot, especially when you're talking about new schemes, they're all laid out with a blueprint of how we think students or residents are going to use them. But actually, once the consumer gets in, they find their own way into it. And having that, as I said, whether it's qualitative or quantitative data, you know, if it's quantitative of going, you know, how often is the roof terrace used? How often are these social study spaces being used? How often are these co-working spaces being used? That's really interesting data to push back up, because you go, well, hang on, if that's being used way more, clearly that's something that to meeting a consumer need. So let's make that a higher messaging hierarchy in our messaging for new customers. And I'd highly recommend that as a course of action rather than going back and living in student accommodation.
I agree with you there, Tom. I mean, the challenge we had here in Quintain was that we built everything at the same time, all in one go, and therefore we didn't have the benefit of hindsight to be able to take forward. Now we do have some great data which we can now put into our next development. But yeah, totally agree. That's a great strategy. But also getting our teams, I don't think I touched on the one point earlier, is getting our marketing team out and about into our product and really understanding it is easily achievable. And that's something that we're going to be doing towards the end of this year as well, but really understanding the product, seeing the pain points, in addition to, you know, we sent out, you probably do this, Lee R. Oh no, Lee Rawlinson. Yeah, I get what you mean now, Tom. You can't say Lee R. You know, you send out surveys, I guess, to understand insights from your students, and we do the same with our residents to find out what works, what they want to see more of in terms of events, because we don't know. You know, like you said, Tom, as well, we have the blueprint for what we think works. Same with all our events and planning. We don't really know. The only people who are going to tell us are the people who are here. And ignoring that and not living it. And I think that's great, Tom, what you did. That's awesome. I'm going to suggest that to our marketing team to come and live in house for a bit. I think that's a really good way to really have a deep understanding and to really help influence your strategies.
Mind you, Russ, you be careful with that, because you've got some lovely products. Your marketing team might just move in and try and live there rent-free.
I've got the units earmarked that I'll put them in back of house or looking over a brick wall.
I mean, I've worked with two different organisations that had very different approaches to that. So one of them, as a marketing and operations team, with any new mobilisation, we used to hold a summer team meeting and go and live go and stay in one of the buildings. You know, and it's amazing what you learn from how noisy the doors slam at night, and how you can hear the lift pinging, you know, when you're lying in bed, or that the fans stay on too long, you know, and that the light is in the wrong place actually when you're trying to, you know, lie in bed and read. And they were really, really valuable, and we always had a feedback session afterwards. I worked with another organisation, and I was like, you know, why don't we utilise these empty beds and go and stay there? And they were like, well, no, we can afford to put you in hotels. Why would we be staying there? And it's like, well, if it's good enough for our customers, then it should be good enough for us. You know, there's nothing that, you know, we shouldn't be prepared to do, and to get that feedback and to then feed back into the product and make continuous improvement. It's vitally important. I think the other side of that is the data side, and you know, we're always talking about how to use data to feed back, and quite often there's a grey area, and we had a previous webinar about it, of kind of how accessible is the data to different departments, and who who owns it. We know in all of our industries, I'm sure, how challenging different systems are, and there's booking systems and CRM systems and analysis systems, and then you get reports back from all your different advertising. So what's your thoughts on data and who owns it between those three departments, and how to pull it all together for the greater good, basically?
The interpretation of data, but it's also diversity, isn't it? Of like 6 of us on this call, you're going to get six different experiences or 6 different opinions. We live in 6 different places around the country, so it's all of those regional variances. So that the data can almost lead you down a bit of a blind alley sometimes if you're not able to foster a sense of diversity across the team, get more eyes on. And I think, Tom, a few years ago, you were over in Boston, you were doing a study tour, weren't you, of the UK, of the US. I've spent time in Canada, China, and literally kind of speaking to the students, looking at what works, and it's that fascination of this kind of sales ops marketing triangle and how it's working in other countries. Are they further ahead than us? Are they slightly behind us? Is there regional localization variances on what that looks like? How do they share information? How do they, apart from reporting up the results of a survey, how do they report across and share learnings and understand everyone's stake in that bit of feedback? You said before, I think Lee, you said about customer kind of comes in, then doesn't end up with what they were promised or what they were offered. And again, is that on marketing? Is that on sales? Is that on ops? The expectation is the gap too wide and too broad, and is there enough? The data tells you one thing, but is there that diversity of being able to have open, protected, safe, non-combative, non-blame conversations about what the data is telling us, and ultimately where that sits?
And when data is used correctly, that's exactly what it should do. Like, this is a massive bugbear of mine, and we talked, Sarah and Dini, about the lack of marketing senior leadership in some organizations. I think the biggest thing missing from a lot is a senior data executive in a lot of organizations that owns this centrally, because between finance, sales, ops, IT, there's a huge amount of data that, used properly, actually should just take all of the emotion around of these decision-making bits, so it's not combative. It just goes, we've got the data here, and if it's analysed correctly, it shows you the answer, whether that's what you were talking about before, was like, how are people actually using those spaces to feed into the next design, to then feed into your marketing messaging hierarchy, to nurture new leads into the business, to help engage your ops people to understand that some of these high, difficult requests they have to do actually have a huge amount of value because it's feeding something here. So like, I personally think if you're talking about missing bits in a wheel, I think data is the biggest missing bit in most businesses' wheel, in terms of a centralized function like a chief data officer doesn't exist. So that, I think we'll start to see them emerge in businesses.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really valid point. I mean, it's not all about us, but we're all centralized in one area, so it's quite straightforward in terms of data sharing across the business. But to your point, Tom, I think non-combative, and I said it before, egos aside, just pure business focus, taking that data, interpreting it as it says. That's really a useful exercise. And but I do think that as a sector, we are not great at sharing data. And we need to, again, and I keep saying it, we are in our infancy, but we need to get to the point where we are all more comfortable to sharing our data. We'll all achieve more by doing that. Great for benchmarking and deeper understanding of the customer and where opportunities lie.
And do you feel like that, PBSA, BTR are quite new sectors? Do you feel that really as a sector we, obviously data we've identified as an issue, but also technology, and that combining of data technology with a young audience that grows up on this, has the sector really embraced that fully and made the most out of that?
Not really. I think the delivery is constantly evolving. The vehicle of how you approach, but also as well, I guess, are you asking the right questions? That's always the big thing. Is your data can tell you literally anything. If you're not asking the right questions, if marketing aren't engaged, in designing and construction of a survey. You're going to have if the ops team design a survey, it's going to look very different than if the marketing team design a survey. And if the sales team design a survey, then it's going to be an amazing survey that asks the right questions with a guaranteed chance of success. So it's making sure that you engage the right team in design and asking the right questions, because otherwise you will construct a survey, and that might be something easy. We've seen it before over the years, haven't we, Tom? We survey twice a year students. The university does it a lot. How many questions? 40 questions. Straight away, no one's going to answer that. Your engagement rate's going to go down. So can you? And it always fascinates me. You see these headlines, don't you? We students want this, and then in the fine print, survey of 30 students. Survey of 1,000 students, 30 responses.
Like a Pantene advert where they go like, we asked 10 women, and 7 of us agreed. So it's like, well, very representative, yeah.
So it's that kind of thing, isn't it? It's I think technology, to your point, Dini, the role of technology, that's always going to evolve. Something new is going to happen. Whether that's, look at the emergence of QR codes, look at the emergence of the kind of virtual metaverse. What's that? The whole virtual world, virtual currency, virtual friends, virtual existence. The world will take us in different ways, but ultimately, if you're not asking the right questions, if you're going into it without an open mind, again, that's, the horse. Have you got a horse in the race? You're asking people to complete a survey with almost kind of the questions are kind of leading you to the answer that you want. So again, how much are you an honest broker?
We did, Lee, when we did our surveys, we use MPS, and so I obviously filled the survey from an operations perspective, then shared it with marketing and got completely, like you said, contrasting sort of questions. But having the two of us together, it taught me a lot from a marketing perspective, and also taught the marketeers a lot from an operations perspective, and that is all value. And we came out with a fantastic survey, 180 questions, but it's all right, it's good. No, it's not, it's nowhere near that, but it came out as a fantastic sort of survey in the end, really, and we can get so much value out of it.
I think there's a huge opportunity for everyone in the market to access the latent data as well, not just the surveys. So if I use an example with Lee Rennie and the live chat function, I'm sure that's tracking lots of data in terms of what are the most frequently asked questions, what's the resolution time of them. If you get something that comes up in that, then you should be tracking that goes, if we've had 50 people ask it, the process doesn't work, so we've got to change it. It's not, don't wait for it to come up in a survey. We know it doesn't work because it's been asked that so many times. And there's lots of latent data available in terms of if you go much deeper into the actual physical environment of the building as well, like space utilization. It's not difficult now to track how many people are using spaces at any given time of the day, so you can plan events, programs, staffing, inform future design of building. Like, there's a huge opportunity for sales, marketing, and ops to use this. And if you like, we are lagging behind other markets. Like if you look at the sort of warehouse shed space of real estate, they've been way ahead on data for a long time. That whole process is data tracked down to a very minute detail that allows giants like Amazon to be delivered, basically, because they know every single bit of the process and how the consumer's interacting with it. So I'm assuming you collect loads of data, Lee Rennie, on your web chat stuff.
Yeah, and the great thing with it is it's an easy way of getting it, because people are much more likely to give feedback and leave comments because the chat's there and it's an easy format of doing it. It's easier than making a phone call or even sending an email. But the key thing is to track it. That data's there, but is everyone analysing it and looking at what's there? You mentioned about something coming up a lot that maybe suggests it's not doing what it should do. On the flip side, it could be that it's an opportunity to create something that people are asking for that maybe you wouldn't have known about, because you've got all these transcripts of people being fairly open with the chat, because they tend to do that more when it is a real person that they're speaking to. So you can find out a lot of information about what they're thinking and what they want, which can then inform marketing decisions, sales decisions based on what people are asking. So there's loads of data in that, and it's about utilizing it. And we know from speaking to our clients that there's often ones where it gets to a point where there's so much coming through, it starts to just drop off, where they just can't keep up with it. And then you have the other end of it where everything's being analysed because there aren't that many chats. But as soon as the numbers go up, you really need a process to say, well, we need to check this on a weekly basis and see what people are saying and make sure that we actually respond to that. Because getting leads is good, but are we responding to all the other stuff?
How do you analyze that data, Lee? Do you have like sentiment analysis, or how does it work?
Well, it's more, I think it's more from our clients' point of view, analysing those transcripts for their own benefit so that they can see what their visitors are looking for. But I suppose that comes back to how much of the function they have. You know, do they have the marketing function set up? Have they got someone that Tom mentioned, that, you know, a data controller who's looking at all this stuff and sending it in the right direction? And our client base ranges from very small businesses to fairly big ones. And of course, the bigger ones are the ones that have that infrastructure to do that stuff. But still, they don't all do that. Us personally, we do a lot of like the analysis of the raw data of it, how many chats, what time of day. You know, it's amazing how many people want to go onto a website outside of office hours, for example. You know, having people there from 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening till 10 o'clock, even 24/7. There's a lot of activity there, which would normally be missed if there wasn't that function, because obviously the offices are closed, people aren't getting email until the next day. So that's the more sort of stuff we analyse.
Just wanted to talk a bit for a minute about customer service, because you know, that is, you know, customer service or customer experience. You know, how does that sort of sit with marketing and operations and sales, really? You know, I guess Lee Rennie, you deal with customer service side of things on live chat. It's not just all about sales. You know, but I guess we could then sort of branch into, you know, where does social media sit? You know, is it purely a sales function, or when does it veer into, you know, into customer service? You know, what are your thoughts on where that sits?
Well, I mean, for me, I think Tom mentioned it earlier about brand. It's all about developing your brand and bringing people to that brand. However they consume that brand, whether it's on social media or YouTube or your own website, it's about getting people attracted to you. And from our point of view, it's then what you do with that when they come to you, because that's where the opportunities are often missed, because the website is drawing in people who are interested, but maybe they're not in the right place to read anything at that moment or even watch a video. So when they need to get in touch, it's how they do that. And obviously so many websites don't give them all the options they'd like. So yeah, I think that's an important thing for the brand. For me, is the thing. Yeah, and that's how we feel about it. You know, we want our brand to stand out, and everything we do is about people seeing the name and getting used to what that actually does and the experience you expect to get from it.
That links into an important question. John Shaw's asked about how do we differentiate? You know, a lot of PBSA schemes, a lot of build-to-rent schemes coming into the marketplace, supply. What is the differentiator? And I definitely see a few avenues of differentiation. I mean, the main one is people. You know, a lot of people don't see beyond the asset or see beyond the building. It is very much the people, the community. We've all been to hotels, we've been to different places around, and you can learn a lot of parity with the hotel and hospitality industry. We're quite fortunate, Home for Students. We have seen, particularly over the last couple of years, a lot of movement in rock stars in the hotel and hospitality industry coming into PBSA, coming into continuing that resident experience. Having a longer relationship with their residents rather than 1 or 2 nights, it's the whole year, and all of that, and that really rolling out the red carpet and being able to differentiate. Another avenue is price. Not every product in the marketplace has to be brand new, shiny and premium. I think that's one of the things certainly that I've seen over my time in property, that there are different avenues, and certainly now no one's building non-en-suite low cost accommodation, that's for sure. Ironically, I was having a conversation with one of the universities that we work with, and they were saying that same thing. One of their challenges now is to try and engage students away from some of the problems and challenges that they're facing in the HMO market and the HMO sector. where landlords aren't necessarily tuned into their needs, certainly concerns around safety and support, and also the tensions that exist between other residents that are non-students, as a great example. And how do they entice students to kind of stay on the campus and not head off into the HMO sector? And one of the challenges is price, and it's really difficult to compete with HMO being half or more the price of student accommodation. So are we to see that there's a change in products? I mean, I suppose in Russell's area, you know, that change of use, something that was retail, that was office, that was commercial, making its transformation into more resi, and seeing that. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the two kind of important ways of differentiating people and price. The product itself, you know, you were getting a bed, you were getting a pillow, you're getting a window if you're lucky, you know, heating, but all the other things are at the margins there.
Yeah, I'd agree. And to be honest, if you have, you know, products, I know there's like an amenities arm race, used to be in the US and it's here, or was here. I think it's stabling now. But, you know, you can have the shiniest building, all the bells and whistles, but without the people, to your point, Lee, you've got nothing. You know, you'll attract people in, but they'll soon get fed up with the lack of human interaction and service and genuine care. You have genuine care, the product can age, it can be faulty, and you can be forgiven to an extent. Not that you want your assets to decline, obviously, but it is just all about the people. And yeah, price definitely does come into it. There's a ceiling, isn't there? So I think on social media as well, you know, that plays a really important point, and we're seeing a lot of people are should I say braver, sort of being quite vocal on social media, and giving opinions than they are in person. So it's why we'd like to sort of deal with people face to face, rather, because, you know, when we have issues, we'd rather talk about them face to face, and it's so much easier if they can see in your eyes that you mean it and you're going to resolve it, and that just goes so much further than just dealing with it over social media. But it's still about driving social proof, isn't it, with social media, and bringing to life the experience of living with us. But again, it all goes back again to that first website. You know, what we're pitching, are we delivering on what we're able to, what we're saying we're delivering on? All goes back to that circle: sales, marketing, and operations. It's key, interlinked massively, end to end.
I think with social media, it's just important to have a real clear channel strategy, isn't it? Because as much as you want to have them as sales channels where everything's shiny and perfect, the consumer still might want to use that as a tool to communicate. I did it the other day and it really frustrated me, whether like, oh, you need to email our support team. It's like, but hang on, I want to talk to you here. So they just sort of fobbed me off and said it's not part of our channel strategy here on our social. It's like, well, okay, well now I'm going to post publicly rather than DM you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tom.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, but thanks for sorting out face to face.
That seems like a great place to end the conversation, really. So thank you all very much for discussing your own experiences, and also kind of sharing some ways that hopefully the sector can all improve on their sales, marketing and operations. We've added some information into our chat about our sponsor, and also about an offer that Melu are offering on their live chat service, if that is of interest. Deanie, I'll hand over to you to summarise.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. That was a brilliant chat. We thought it'd be interesting, and we thought we could probably go on for longer, and we probably could, but I think we're all agreed that that kind of link between marketing, sales and op is absolutely vital, and kind of bringing that data into that triangle or circle in the middle is the thing that's going to drive it all together. So thank you, and I'm pretty sure kind of our audience have really enjoyed it and got lots to take away, and hopefully we can, you know, help make the organisations work like Home Student and Quintain, because it sounds like you guys are kind of leading on this structure. So thank you, Lee, Russell and Tom. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to all our guests for listening in. It's great to have you with us. And also another thanks to Staykeepers for being our sponsor for the event. And if you do have some void rooms left, then do give them a shout, because they'll be able to help you. Finally, our next session is not that long away, actually. It's on November the 10th, where we'll be talking about kind of how you engage with universities and develop mutual benefits. We've got a great lineup for that. We've got Kate Owen from UPP, Robin Walsh from Bournemouth University, Kate Haffrey from King's, and Lee Quayle from UGO. So I think that will be a really, really interesting session. So please book on the link that's in our chat now to join us for that. And finally, thanks everyone. We're glad to be back for season 2, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye.